And that's it. We are live. So excited to have you here on the show, man. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, man. I'm good to be here, bro. Wherever here is
Where
cyberspace.
we are all virtually here, whatever the hell that
We're
means. I
not
can't wait to do
really
these things
here,
in
but
person.
we're here.
We're here enough, as it were. Oh man. So for those of you who do not know, do you like to go by JM, by the way, versus John? Like what's your favorite?
I
What are your
just go
friends
by
call you?
John.
Okay.
John.
So John, let's see, New York Times bestseller, ultra endurance athlete. In particular, the one that jumped out at me was two
Well,
times
not
at
New York Times bestseller. I don't know where that came. I wish I could be.
You're right there. You're right there on the bubble.
I'm at the cusp. I'm at
You
the
are.
cusp.
Right. I'm forward projecting your success.
Yes. I've been written up in the Times, but
There you go. But ultra endurance athlete. And plant-based guy as well. And so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show was specifically because we spent a lot of time talking about mental toughness, mental discipline, grit, tenacity, these types of things. And I thought, man, there's nobody that sort of shows that better than you, because what is endurance sports more than anything? It's a mental exercise, right?
Yeah.
So what are a couple other things that people would know you by, and then we'll sort of jump into the fun
I was
stuff.
the lead singer for the Cro-Mags for many decades. Got a few books out. I actually published. I'm publishing my fifth book, book number 4 and 5. But I'm a writer. New Yorker. So that's it.
We can tell by the accent. I love that.
What the fuck?
Hey, forget about it.
Mom, don't be a fucking Mama Luke.
I absolutely love it. So wait a minute. How do you go from rock star to plant-based endurance athlete?
Well, we have to back up prior to that, because I come from a broken home. My father was a professional boxer, alcoholic, beat down my mom, like really not a good, but the state took us out of the home. My mother spun into depression. The state took us away from her and put us into like one of the worst abusive foster homes in New York, where my two brothers and myself literally had to steal the dog's food to eat, and other unspeakable things happened to us as kids. So that kind of like cemented in me this kind of like, the house was closed down by the state, and then they put us in different homes and boys' homes, and I ended up with my older brother in St. John's Home for Boys in Rockaway Beach, and we were the only white kids in there, and the neighborhood kids were all Irish. They called it the Irish Riviera. It was like the blue collar, and there's this black boys' home in the middle of their neighborhood, and they used to beat the kids up all the time, and it was not good. So I just went onto the streets. My first acid trip, LSD in 76, the dude I was tripping with, he was set on fire by his parents, by his mother's boyfriend, and he tried to murder me with a knife. And I split the home and went onto the streets of New York City and did crazy things, and always had this nobody's going to put their hands on me again after what happened to me as a kid mentality. So I grew up fighting on the streets, and I was shot, stabbed, selling drugs and stuff like that, and saw people murdered in front of me. New York was one of the most violent cities in the country at that time. So and the whole time you're just this kid, but you're having a blast, but at the same time it's like and I saw that coming, because like everybody I was hanging, my first girlfriend died of a heroin overdose. She was 18, and I was like 15, and I just kept seeing the crowd that I was hanging out with were murderers and just insane people. And I just kept feeling like something bad's going to happen. And I started selling angel dust and smoking angel dust. And I really feel the whole thing that went down. I write about it in my memoir, The Evolution of a Cro-Magnon. The best thing that ever happened to me, and I know some people say it sounds cliche, but was getting locked up.
Really?
Because, I got locked up when I was in 78, I got locked up. So I did 2 years upstate. And it really, you get 3 hots in a cot. They always tell you when you get locked up, like get your weight up. So I got real into like getting strong, and they had a boxing program in lockup. And I mean, I had my problems in lockup too, because you're of the Caucasian persuasion, as they say. And when I went into Spofford in the Bronx, I was the only white kid. And then, I had people telling me, you're going to be my Maytag and all this shit. And so it was fighting from day one in Spofford. I had the first day on the floor, I had to put a chair over this dude's head and knock his friend out. So, and then there was riots in Spofford, and just, when the cops took me up there, they said, you better go in fighting, because the last white kid we brought up here got murdered and shit. And I was like, everybody knew about Spofford. It was 21 and under at the time. So you never you always heard you never wanted to go there. But anyway, I was looking for a way out. And so when I got incarcerated, I got into like training a lot, because that's all you have. You have to keep your mind right when you're locked up. And the thing was, toward the end of, you're still a juvenile considered by the state. So like they have to release you to somebody. So then they start trying to send you home on home visits, to your moms or wherever you're going to get released to.
Right. And
that just didn't work out, because I wasn't raised by her. So like we didn't really get along.
Stranger.
And I was really into drugs at the time. And so I would just go home for the weekend, and then it would just be like,
that's insane.
And when I got out, I went right back to what I was doing before, which was selling drugs. And I caught a case, and then they offered me the military or going back to lockup, and I chose the military. But then, all the damage was already done. Like in lockup, they put me on Thorazine for some time, which is a tranquilizer, and then like had me seeing a psychiatrist and trying to get in my head, but I wasn't letting anybody get in my head. I never told people what happened to me in that home, because it's embarrassing.
Right.
So like, and then I just screwed up in the Navy too, and I started smuggling and doing drugs. But the saving grace was I was always into punk rock, going to clubs in the 70s in New York, Max's Kansas City, CBGB, seeing the Ramones. And so when I went to Norfolk, they had a punk rock club there called the Taj Mahal. So I started going to see bands, and then I met the Bad Brains, and that was when the whole kind of transformation took place.
What year was that?
That was 1980.
Okay.
So then
you're fresh out. You're going to punk clubs. You're sort of getting inspired.
I was in the Navy, and but I was buck wild. I was smuggling. I was like fucking had a drug business going in Norfolk. Like didn't ever hang out with any military people at all. And I was the only Navy guy they let hang out at this punk club because they hated military people. But these rednecks came in one night and started a fight, and nobody would fight them. And I just started smashing them with chairs, and they're like, all right, this guy can hang out. And then I got to meet Henry Rollins, and all them came down from DC to these bands. They were in the Teen Idols and the Untouchables. I just spoke to Ian. I don't know if you guys know Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and all that. And he started the Discord label, and Henry Rollins is a fucking superstar, fucking great guy. And then the next band that came down was the Bad Brains, and they were just starting to get into Rastafari. And I had just gone to Jamaica with my ship and brought back pounds of weed and met the Rastas in Montego Bay and started telling me about Ital and, like, you know, how this food could just cure disease in the body and all this shit. I was still eating Big Macs. So I just was like, listen, man, give me the weed. And I don't want to hear this shit. And then, like, you know, life has a funny way of bringing you down a path. When I saw the Bad Brains, musically, they just blew me away.
Yeah, that's incredible. Right.
You know, I spent some time hanging out with them, and you know, they were like, yeah, man, we're going to see each other again and all this. And then the singer HR. And then I sold drugs to an undercover detective in Norfolk. And
you were committed to that path, man. I'll give you that.
Man,
you were
like,
committed.
You know, 2 of my prior cases, my first case ever in 76, I sold to undercover cops. And then my second case was, I broke into a supermarket to get into the safe and the pharmacy and all that. I was hanging out with people that were robbing like drug pharmacy warehouses and stealing barrels of Quaaludes and fucking crazy shit. Like, the guys I hung out with in the 70s murdered people. Both of them ended up getting murdered. These guys, Junior Nuts and Dougie Holston from Greenpoint, Brooklyn, complete maniacs. And yeah, so they were looking at giving me some serious time, because the stipulation was if I got in trouble in the military that I had to, it was like being on parole. Right. You know, you're going back to, so I knew what was coming. And then on my ship, we had just left Puerto Rico, and I was restricted to the ship, no pay, fucking like, waiting, and I had to face the civilian case back in Norfolk. So the military couldn't really touch me for that yet, because they had to find me guilty. Right. And they brought me to captain's mast and all that shit and said, all right, you know, depending on what this thing does, I'm probably going to be looking at time in Leavenworth, you know? So this one redneck on my ship kept fucking with me and calling me a faggot and all this shit. And I was like, you know, I just kept telling him like, yo, you need to step the fuck off. And then like we left Puerto Rico, and then we started heading down to South America, stopped in Bermuda, and I got a real bad infection in my jaw because they had pulled my wisdom teeth. And I was really getting sick, and then this dude just said some shit to me one day, and I lost it. And I was a boatswain mate, so he was in the paint locker, and I just locked the door down and went in there and beat him down and smashed him with paint cans, and then that was it. They put me in the brig, and then I got so sick they had to medevac me off the ship by helicopter. Wow. Yeah, I was on a CGN, so it had a helo deck in the back. Fantail had a helo deck. So the helo lands, medevac me back to Puerto Rico, and forgot to say that I was supposed to be a prisoner. And they cut me my papers to send me back to Norfolk. And that's when I got back to Norfolk, I just split. And I was AWOL for 15 years.
Okay, hold on. We got to pause. So I've been letting you go because this story is so fascinating. Yeah. But I've got questions I want to dig into a little bit. And so your background and how you grew up is just unbelievable. However, right, it's just so tragic, and it was almost a training ground for you to be on the criminal path, right?
Oh
Like you,
yeah, 100% was.
it's like a funnel to one outcome, which is the path that you went on, right? There's no other way. You don't
Absolutely.
know anything else.
Like we went to Rollway State Prison, like on the original Scared Straight in '78, where I was locked up. They took us there.
It's incredible. So, John, I happen to have this belief. While my childhood wasn't nearly as destructive as yours, but we share some commonalities, right? Alcoholism at an early age, broken home, moved out when I was young, real young. That being said, I believe, and I think you are the manifestation of this, that life happens for you and not to you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wrote that in my memoir. I said, you know, when you was in Spofford, when you're out in the yard or you're in the chow hall or you're in the TV or whatever the fuck, you know, you had to put this like tough guy, you know, persona.
Sure.
Because if you don't, you're going to be a victim. Yep. And, but then when they closed the cell doors at night, man, you heard the kids crying, man, because that's what we were. We was kids, and I was crying too. Like, why is all this happening to me? Because you don't even know, you know, they're telling you I got my final case was for angel dust, and they were telling me because all these people were getting murdered in the city from angel dust, violent murders and stuff, that I was looking at probably 4 to 6 years. And you know, the thing was, you're like, you don't know what. I just kept saying to God, like, why is this happening to me in this lifetime? What the fuck did I do? Like, look what I had to endure my whole life. Like, just, you know, insanity and chaos. But as I started taking to the path of yoga, I was a monk for 2 years, 82 to 84. And I started realizing that everything happens for a reason. It's like, you know, it's like you said, it's really happening for us to grow. And if we just play victim, why, you know, because I have a younger sibling, my younger brother, and that's what he does. He plays the victim card still to this day. He's a drug addict. He's been in comas, I don't know how many times, like almost died. And I just, you know, started realizing, like, now I never asked that question. As a matter of fact, the opening line, one of the opening pages of my book, I thanked my father for being the asshole that he was, because like it sent me down a completely different trajectory in life.
Right.
I would never, you know, the press, I got a lot of press on the book, you know, because at first they thought I made the shit up. Like, they're like, there's no way that this story is fucking true. And
that sounds like a Hollywood movie.
Them fake memoirs started coming out, A Million Little Pieces.
Yep.
And I was like, I had to leave stuff out of that book to not incriminate myself. And then when they did all the research, they're like, holy shit, like, this is fucking unbelievable. Like, I got the cover of the Village Voice in New York, and like all press and radio and TV and stuff like that. And I said, you know, and the press always asked me, you know, if you could go back, would you change anything? And I said, absolutely not, man. Nope. I would take every bit of fucking pain and all the shit I went through, because it was all a lesson, you know?
100%.
And it develops a survivor's mindset. Like, I was like, yo, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm a fucking survivor. I survived the fucking streets in New York, not only as a kid, but when I left the military and I split, I was down living in Alphabet City, and I was in a burnt out building, Puerto Rican gang members coming in, try to take the building from us, armed with guns, like the most insane shit. And then even relapse from 88 to 90 into crack cocaine and pills and I did a 2-year tear from the East Coast to the West Coast of like robbing drug dealers and fucking robbed the Red Hot Chili Peppers merch. Girl was selling fucking crystal meth, and I mean, I was just a fucking maniac, you know. Like,
so one thing. So I agree with you fully in that. People ask me like, "Oh, would you go through if you could do it all over again? Would you go through what you went through?" And I always say 100% because it gave me a gift, and I can tell just by talking to you that you've been bestowed with the same gift, which is once you've had such an intense trial by fire, right? Once the world has thrown everything it can to beat you down and you get knocked down and you stand back up again, it puts this, I call it kind of a fire in your belly or a chip on your shoulder, but it's more than that, right? Those are sort of, tropes at this point. It's more like you can't beat me, right? Like it gives this sort of resilience of like, knock me down. I'm just going to get pissed off and get back up again to the world, to the universe, to sort of everything. So that when things happen in your life today, now that you've reached the success that you have, it's nothing because on a relative basis, compared to where you came from, you're like any stress, anything that breaks, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like it's such a minor thing, right? And so one of the problems I've personally found is because of that, I don't get super stressed out anymore about really anything, right? Business is good, business is bad. Make more money, make less money. It's kind of a zero. I still sleep like a baby at night. But the downside that I found for me personally, I want to know about this about you, is that it inhibits my upside, right? So in joyous moments, I'm not as joyous or as happy as other people around me experiencing that same exact thing. And I'm almost jealous of them that they can be so happy about this thing. So do you find, I know there was a lot to unpack there, but does some of that happen to you? Does that resonate with you?
This is the book I read a lot. This is the Bhagavad Gita from India, right? So it tells us that we have to go beyond the world of duality, happiness, distress, heat, cold, all this fame, infamy, this, that, and be equipoised in just, in the straight truth. So, I find that the plateau effect affects me more. Like I'm not going to say I don't get stressed out. I do. I'm a work in progress. I haven't cured my fucking demons. I've just woke up today. I beat them down with a stick. I got to work. And I'm a big fan of the Rich Roll podcast. I've been on there several times, and he just had somebody on there. And they said, people have it ass backwards because they think action follows mood. I feel like, okay, now I want to do it, but that's not the truth. Mood follows action. So you have to take those steps, that active leap towards making shit happen. And the Bhagavad Gita also says that we're not supposed to be attached to the fruits of the result. That we're like yoga, you're doing it for the service and the work itself. So I try to keep that mentality. And the thing is it's more about the plateau effect for me. And I have great teachers for writing. Robert McKee, who wrote Story, and I follow Stephen Pressfield, who's wrote
amazing.
The War of Art is like one of my favorite books. And
absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Book, he gave it to his mentor, and his mentor said, "Good, now start the next one." So I always try to finish one project and have something else going, a next book, a next race. I became a certified life coach. So during this whole pandemic, I used it to improve myself. I got 2 books done, book 4 and 5.
That's incredible.
I trained for an Ironman, and I took an 8-week course to become a certified life coach. So, the thing is it's kind of like the law of diminishing returns too. Robert McKee always says that the first ice cream cone tastes great.
Amazing.
The 30th one, you're sick as a fucking dog. So it's like, how many times are you going to be in the joyous moment of like, hey, I got this, and hey, I got that? That's hankering and lamentation. We hanker after things, and then like it doesn't turn out to be what we thought, and then we lament over it. And I don't get caught up in that, because I just love the process of the work. I love the process of training. I love the process of reaching out, helping other people, you know, writing, all of the stuff that I do. There's just, the satisfaction is in the work itself, whether it manifests into something tangible. I started writing screenplays in 1990 when I came off of my fucking drug tear and all the shit I went through. I'm like, and I'm still trying to tell that story and still writing. And, you know, so it's, if you love something, you don't give it up, regardless of, you know, whether the result is there or not. Like,
that's exactly
to me, I love turning on my computer, looking at a blank page, and then all of a sudden there's fucking scenes and dialogue, and like, how did this scene turn? How, you know, where's the turning point of the scene? What's the value at stake? What's the subtext? What's the deeper meaning? So you're dissecting every single, you know, to the smallest element of film, which is the beat. And it's so difficult to do. But you have to assign difficult tasks in life, man.
So there's a sort of a trope question here, which is, what would, if you had $100 billion, right? If money didn't matter, you could buy whatever you wanted. After you bought all the stupid stuff, after all that, what would you do to fill your time, right? You're not going to sit on the beach drinking Mai Tais forever.
Not buy stupid stuff. I would open up.
Exactly.
So say, for instance, in 2000, I got.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I took that money and I opened up a yoga center on St. Mark's. I did all the construction. I had a construction company. And when I finished it, I turned the keys over to the married couple and I said, you guys run this. This ain't my temple. This is the people's temple. And we helped thousands of people in the 10 years we had that place came through that door. So, you know, I would utilize my money correctly if I did get, and that's what I'm working toward now, is buying a piece of land and opening up a yoga ashram and having it, you know, self-sustainable, like organic farming, and maybe open another place in the city. And then when they want to get away from the chaos and the madness, you know, but
you got to meet my friend Ian McCall. So Ian is a former UFC champion, and he is doing something similar, I believe, out in Arizona.
Yeah.
And he purchased this massive piece of land. He's huge into yoga and creating a live-in spiritual. I would. It's like a place where you can. Like a retreat, but like a long-term retreat, right? Like this isn't like a, hey, I'm going for the weekend. This is like, hey, I'm going for like 9 months.
Yeah.
Right. I live there. Simple dwelling, simple life, growing your own food.
Simple living and high thinking. That's what Prabhupada always said. And he encouraged that, you know, and you know, that's why when I got into it, I became a monk for 2 years, man, you know, and so.
I want to go back because we didn't touch on the Cro-Mags at all, and the music scene. We like glossed right over it. So take me back to mid to late 80s, 85 to 90.
Well, you know, the music stuff started because when I left, I moved in with the Bad Brains because they lived in this studio, 171A on Avenue A, and it was surrounded by like gang members. This big drug gang was over there, and um, they would come, like they would have shows at this place, and the Puerto Rican cats would come in there with knives because they didn't want crowds and stuff. And then, you know, I was there with like the Beastie Boys and all these guys one night, and these guys would just came in there and started beating people up. Nobody would fight them. And I was like, yo, let's get these motherfuckers. Like, nobody would, everybody was like, no, they kill people, which they did. They had the biggest heroin cocaine spot in America on 11th Street.
That's just incredible.
And the Bad Brains kind of were like, you know, I was on drugs that night too. I took a Quaalude, a Gorilla Biscuit, which is what they called it. So I felt I was invincible. But they put a KOS on me. I couldn't come down to the Lower East Side for like 3 or 4 months. They were looking to kill me. And I went down one night and just faced them. And I was like, yo, let's do this. And they fucking pulled out guns and were like, take them to the building type shit. And the Bad Brains came out and like put the kibosh on the whole thing. And then that's how that whole Cro-Mag thing started, because I was living with the Bad Brains at 171 while they was recording that album. And then I started rehearsing with the Cro-Mags, who were, the drummer was the Bad Brains manager at the time, and the guitar player was this guy, Dave. And then the bass player was the guy who ended up in the Cro-Mags, whatever, Harley. And then the thing just turned south, because like this dude Harley had a fucked up attitude and nobody wanted to deal with him. So we all quit. And then I went to roadie with the Bad Brains on tour. And that was really like, they were like, you could come out on the road with us. You can't eat meat. You have to fucking be drug and alcohol free.
Wow.
And it was intense because the singer was like, HR was like into running, and I was into running. So we would go running every day. And like, if you guys want to know who the Bad Brains are, anybody who don't know, put on Bad Brains full set 1982 CBGBs, and you'll see why these guys changed the fucking entire world of music. Everybody who came in contact with them wanted to be near them. They were like these Sadhu Rastafarian dudes that could play circles around anybody. And like incredible musicians. And I was fortunate enough to go on tour with them. And then the roadies formed a band called Blood Clot. That's my band even to this day. I do Blood Clot, which, because when everything was fucked up, the Bad Brains would be like, you know, fix the Blood Clot amps, fix the Blood Clot this. So like
it just stuck.
It just stuck, like the roadies, because we was the ones fixing the Blood Clot situations, like that we just called the band Blood Clot. And then I continued and put out 3 records, 2 records with that band, and writing new music now for them. And yeah, but the mid 80s, it was crazy because like I went into the temple from 82 to 84. So I got that monk training. I was training in martial arts with this devotee, Hare Krishna.
John, I'll say this. You are not afraid to say yes to new opportunities.
The temple, I moved out of the temple into like a burnt out building at 9th Street between C and D, which is like no man's land for white boys. And we lived in a burnt out building, and we were like, it was me and the bass player, and we were writing the lyrics. And he had started the band again while I was a monk, and I would see him. He'd be like, yo, you got to leave the temple. We're doing the Cro-Mags again. And I was like, nah, man, this is going to be my life now. And they were kind of like doing some skinhead, knucklehead shit, writing stupid shit. So when I left and came back to the band, I injected the philosophy, and that's where we got the album title, The Age of Quarrel, which is Kali Yuga, the age that we're in, and you know, has songs like We Gotta Know and It's the Limit, Seekers of the Truth, and I wrote the choruses for like Hard Times and these other songs, and then we just started playing out live, and like Metallica would come and see us, like that type of shit. Like we put so much energy into the live shows, and I would climb up the top of the PA stack 20 feet, do a backflip over the barricade into the crowd. Like just, we didn't give a fuck. We just put everything on the line every fucking night. We toured with Motorhead, and Lemmy was like, this is the only fucking band I've ever come out to see every night on the tour, because you never knew what the fuck was going to happen. And then we got a record deal and got robbed by Profile Records and our manager. And then that just started the whole fucking downward spiral. Egos got out of control with certain individuals in the band. I won't mention no names. But he was the one who everybody quit because of the first time. And I just don't deal like that. You know, like just because you get some fame, man, people's fucking heads. Like I know so many people that stayed humble when they became crazy famous, and I know so many people that didn't, and that I know who like are multi fucking like famous movie stars and musicians and whatever the fuck. And then I know so many people that just stayed humble and didn't forget their roots. And I don't give a fuck. Fame and money is fleeting and temporary. So
yes, it is.
And that's what destroyed the Cro-Mags. You know, at the end of 87, we went to Europe and we're touring with Megadeth and all these bands and Motorhead. And, you know, the bass player stole all the money at the end of the tour. And I had to like go home on Christmas and get evicted. And he stayed in Europe spending all the money.
All your money. Okay. That's so, your story is so wild, man. And it has these huge ups and these huge downs. Excuse me. So I got a transitional question here to get us from punk rock fame to endurance athlete.
Yeah.
And it's not a question of how you get there. It's how, as a person who fell to temptation over and over and over again in your early life, how do you then create the mental fortitude to be a top performing endurance athlete, which is quite the opposite, right? And before you answer that,
see, I gotta backtrack you, because I was never into. I had my relapse, right? 88 to 90, but I was never into drugs and all that shit. I would be on the road fucking training. I would get up every day and run fucking 10 miles and work out. And we took like this martial arts expert on the tour with us, and I trained with him every day. Our shit was not, we came off the road fucking, myself personally, I came off the road healthier than when I fucking went on the road.
Which is crazy.
I ate a plant-based diet. I used the road to fucking just become, and then performing every night for an hour on top of all the training. And even these days, I'm still doing it, because when I was going on tour, I was having to train for an Ironman. So I would have to get up 5 o'clock in the fucking morning, find the swimming pool, find the gym, go do a 15-mile run, work out, find the rowing machine, find a stationary bike at a fucking hotel somewhere. Whatever it took. You know, you got to make sacrifices and to get where you want to be. And that's one of the things I always knew, because even when I first started my music career, I was living in a fucking burnt out building, taking fire hydrant showers in the middle of the winter. And then I would get on my bike and be a bike messenger in New York for 8 hours a day in the freezing cold to pay for the fucking Cro-Mag rehearsals and recording sessions. So like, it was always about the fucking grind and putting the work. The work ethic was always there. and still to this day, it's there. I don't make excuses. Like, you know, I have a coach that coaches me, and she's fucking amazing. She coached professional athletes and people to get to Kona World Championship in the Ironman and all that. So you have to hold yourself accountable. If you say you're going to do something, you know, like David Goggins says, it's that accountability mirror, man. You
100%.
hold that
Yes.
motherfucker up. And I'm always looking to those inspirational guys like him and Rich Roll, and even like Joe Rogan and shit. When you look what, like, you know, what he's done, like I'm friends with Brian Callen.
So right.
And getting to where they want to be. So,
all right, John. So one last question, and then we'll close it up here. Will you explain a little bit for people who are not familiar what the Kona Challenge is? So what the race is? Explain it, and why Kona in particular is considered the hardest. Would you kind of touch upon that?
Yeah, Kona World Championship. It's definitely the. I mean, I've heard there's another race that's as difficult, but I've done that. I've done Kona twice. And so first of all, an Ironman is 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile marathon. The thing that's
it sounds absurd when you say that, by the way.
Well, the thing about Kona is, you know, even the swim, the pros go in first, the current's working in their favor. So once you hit the swim and then you make the first turn and you're heading back in, the current's pushing you out. So then you get in, and then the real fun starts because, you know, the first climb out of T1, which is the swim to bike transition, you're going up this hill, and then you come down and you go out onto the Queen K. Yep. So when you get out there, you know, and it's so funny because the first 20 miles, I was like, oh shit, maybe the winds ain't going to be bad this year. And then you get out there, there's nothing around.
Yes.
There's no crowd.
So explain this a little bit, because people think Kona, they think Hawaii and lush. No. This is
it's lava fields. Yes. It's 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts. The heat is baking you fucking alive.
Yes, it is.
And you're dealing with this motherfucker right here the whole time, because there is no cheering crowds. That's down when you make the turn to come in for, you know, for the fucking, the final, you know, half mile.
Yes.
Other than that, you're out there dealing with this motherfucker right here, and you go all the way out, and then you start hitting the climbs right before you get to Hawi, the halfway turnaround. And the wind is just fucking it's a headwind. And then you think, oh, great, at least I'm going to have a tailwind when I turn at Hawi and go back into town. But guess what? The wind changes direction over there, and it starts coming from the other way. So then it's pushing against you. So it's a head crosswind that if it could blow you off your bicycle. That's how, you know. And then you get all the way back into town and you go to T2. That is transition 2 from bike to run. And then you do that same little hill when you come out, you come down, and then you have to run up a hill that the gradient is like this. Then you take a left, and then it's boiling hot, and you have to run through the Natural Energy Lab, which is the temperature coming off the concrete is about 130 miles an hour, 130 degrees.
Yep.
It's all solar panels. So it's attracting this fucking heat, and you know, it's just a kick in the nuts. But you know, the thing is you see people out there and it's, to me, the reason I love the community is there's a lot of people there that overcame a lot of stuff in their life.
Yes.
Matter of fact, the first
Beautiful.
person with Down syndrome just did to ever complete. I follow him on Instagram. This kid Chris, and he's the first person with Down syndrome to finish an Ironman.
Wow.
And then you see people. I met some veterans who were blinded in Iraq and Afghanistan and lost limbs, and I became friends with Roderick Sewell, the first double amputee above the knee to ever finish Kona. He went plant-based. And then you just meet these wheelchair athletes. And I met an 83-year-old Japanese man who finished Ironman Kona. And like, it's the community. That's what keeps me. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about him. It's the community. I don't get into the jock mentality of like, all the bullshit.
Right. It's incredible. I know I keep saying that, but just such an amazing run.
Their brother or mother that died of cancer, or they beat cancer, or they had some disability, or just wanting to challenge themselves. They overcame addiction, alcoholism. Yep. Everybody's got a fucking story.
Yes.
And I think that if people in life just stepped back for a minute and said, hey, man, maybe this person's going through some shit.
Yes.
Like,
preach.
Yeah.
So, John, last thing, we're going to wrap it up here. You've got a 30-second Super Bowl commercial slot. You were going to reach 100 million eyeballs. You're not going to promote anything, but you want a message. You want a message to the people. What would you say? What advice, given the incredible story that you've gone through, what advice?
Anything is obtainable. Positive mental attitude. Once we change our mindset is everything. Mm-hmm. Once we change our mindset, we can change our entire life. So
I agree.
That's the whole thing, is to change our perspective. There's no two people on earth that look at the same event the same way.
That's correct.
Everybody has their way of looking at things, but it's the mindset that we walk around with in life that is going to determine where we end up in life. I know a lot of people that ran the streets with me that
didn't make it.
They hung out with the wrong people and they didn't make it. My band Blood Clot, we had to kind of be on hiatus because the guitar player relapsed 2 years ago and OD'd and died. So it's like, I know what's waiting for me. Once I stop doing the work,
that's it.
That's waiting for me. All that bad shit is waiting for me. So do the work every day. Like Stephen Pressfield's book says, do the work.
And that is where we will go out on. Thank you so much. This has been very enjoyable, a deep dive. Thank you for being so candid. I couldn't agree more about the positive mental attitude. Everything that John just mentioned will actually be in the show notes, his Instagram, information on his band, as well as a little more information on him and some of the books that he recommended in this podcast. You can always follow me on Instagram at Piero Rogers, or my website, which has everything, pierrogers.com. To everybody out there, it's John. Thank you so much, man. This has been amazing.
Hey, Happy New Year to everybody. Boom.
Happy New Year.